Welcome to CFTC Talks. I'm your host, Andy Bush. Just a quick reminder, there's a disclaimer at the end of the show that's important for you to hear. And speaking of hearing, have you noticed anything different outside when you go out there in the morning? That's right, it's those wonderful sounds of birds chirping, and that means we have broken away from winter and entered into the spring season here in the United States. And that also means it's a critical time for the nation's farmers with spring planting. Now, given this time of anticipation of growing the nation's food supply, we thought it would be, a great idea to have on the person heading up the agency in charge of developing and executing federal laws relating to farming, agriculture, forestry, and food, the USDA. The United States Agriculture Department was started in 1862 by Abraham Lincoln and is a cabinet-level agency that oversees the American farming industry. Today, we are so honored to have on the USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue. Mr. Secretary, welcome to CFTC Talks.
Good morning, Andy. Good to be with you today.
Well, thank you. And I just want, for our audience, I just want to give our audience a little bit of background nuggets on you because I think it's fascinating. First and foremost, you came from a farming family in Georgia and state where ag is the leading economic driver. You grew up on a dairy and diversified row crop farm in rural Georgia. You served our country in the U.S. Air Force and you rose to the rank of captain. You earned a doctor of veterinary medicine from the University of Georgia. You were a Georgia state senator for 11 years and governor of Georgia for 2 terms. As well, you served on the boards of the National Grain and Feed Association, and you've been president of both the Georgia Feed and Grain Association and the Southeastern Feed and Grain Association. And truly, it's hard to imagine someone with better skill sets to take over this role. But Mr. Secretary, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question to start off here. Which one of these had the biggest impact on you?
Well, you didn't mention 2 important roles, a father of 4 and a grandfather of 14. So,
I apologize.
Considerably, but obviously you learn different things in different roles. I learned how to work as a young boy on our farm in Bonaire, Georgia. We obviously those cows don't take a vacation or a holiday or weekend, so the dairy cows need to be milked, but also the crops need to be grown in order. I learned how to work there and was really blessed. I remember one day I considered that a real blessing where I probably didn't for a number of years, but certainly my veterinary training at the University of Georgia taught me how to analyze and think critically, how to do differential diagnoses that were there. One job that wasn't listed, I was chairman of the Planning and Zoning Committee, and that taught me how to listen to people who were passionate about their property and their neighborhoods and the surrounding areas. So that was a good training. Obviously, in the legislature, I learned that everyone didn't think the same as I did, and we represented different districts, and we all came from different perspectives, and we learned how to appreciate differences among us that way. Certainly, governor was a great honor, and it was a great opportunity. I learned, frankly, how to really implement fiscal conservatism during that time. Of 8 budgets I presented to the General Assembly from 2003 to 2011, 5 of them had literally less money than the year before. So we had to do more with less during that period of time. And I think the people of Georgia not only survived but thrived during that period as we understood how together as a civil servant team throughout the employee base of Georgia, we did more with less. So all of those were great. Private business taught me about customer service and how the customer needs to be served and felt like he's respected.
Well, let's talk about your role at the USDA. This is one of the largest agencies in the federal government with over 100,000 employees and 29 agencies under the umbrella of the USDA from agriculture marketing service to the rural development program with 4,500 locations across the U.S. and abroad. So I guess from an organizational standpoint, it seems like it makes sense, and it would appear that strategic goals are pretty important for the agency to set the path and the vision for it.
They are, and you can't have too many. They've got to be clear and relatively well-defined. I told from the very first day I came over here, my goal for the USDA, my broad strategic goal, is to be the most efficient, the most effective, the most customer-focused agency in the federal government. I want our customers, not only the farmers of America, but the consumers, as well as those who depended on us for food, supplemental food nutrition, and schools across the country as well, to feel like we have them first in our hearts and our minds in our service. So we're building that culture out. I find people who are anxious to make progress in those areas, and I've been very delighted with the progress that we've made.
Well, recently, and you were down in Orlando, and you said the USDA should be more like Disney, which I think is great. But unpack that for our audience. What did you mean by that?
Well, it really means that while we're a government agency and we have products and services that our customers can't get anywhere else, we want to be the destination of choice for them, just like Disney would be. There are many venues of entertainment today, but most everyone understands that the customer service aspect of Disney is premier. We have a great quick food restaurant in Georgia called Chick-fil-A, if you're familiar with it.
Sure.
They also are known with their industry of the wonderful service and the great quality there. So those are the things we aspire to in the USDA, and it builds with a culture of expectation from me down the leadership all the way to that employee. We want to inspire people to do well and to serve people well. And frankly, what we see that happens is they can go home with a smile on their face at the end of the day, knowing they've helped people.
And I'm sure your clients feel much better about that too, if they're getting that level of service that you aspire to.
Well, they certainly should, and we believe that they do, and we hear from them fairly often about that. Obviously, we hear from them when we fail to meet their expectations, and that's what we want to do as well. So
certainly,
it's good feedback.
Well, recently on the show, we had Dr. John Floros on from Kansas State University, and we talked about the rapid innovation that's occurring in the ag space. Now, part of that listening tour that you've been on, you visited 33 states recently. What did you hear and learn from your trips?
I've learned that farmers far and wide are some of the most creative, innovative, and early technological adopters of new technology, and that's good news. We see much of the farm equipment that we're using today, frankly, was probably invented or first designed in some farmer's shed, where they found a better way to do whatever it was they needed to be done, whether it was mechanization or software or technology or other things. The degree of precision agriculture, I think, is a little-told story across the country today. And there are farmers out there doing amazing things using less inputs with technology that uses cameras and optics in order to identify specifically where to spray a weed and different things like that will be a huge bounty for productivity increases in the future, as well as ecological and environmental increases.
Yeah, and I think that for me, studying the markets and looking at things, I've in a prior life, I had a lot of agriculture clients, and I was just constantly amazed at their leaps forward in innovation, whether it was driverless tractors or electric tractors or precision farming and using sensors, especially for irrigation. I think that's really interesting from a number of different standpoints, as farmers and agriculture, to some extent, like you said, lead the way. And part of that, I think, is driven by the need to be very, very efficient because of what's going on in the agriculture markets and the very low prices that have been there really since 2014. So I mean, to put it very simply, there's supply issues here and demand issues at work. And so I'd just like to ask you, what are your top 3 areas to focus on to increase demand for U.S. agriculture products?
Well, as you indicated, nothing drives demand like the economy of innovation, frankly, and that's why farmers are always looking for a more effective, efficient way to do things, and that's what drives them. They're innovators at heart. They also are so productive that we're dependent upon trade and demand, and that's why we have our Undersecretary of Trade, Ted McKinney, who was the Director of Agriculture in Indiana, traveling the world, knocking on doors, calling upon customers to sell U.S. products. He's been to Japan, he's been to India, he's been to Southeast Asia, he's been to South America. again, letting them know the benefits of safe, nutritious American food. And that's what it's going to take, because we're so blessed in this country, we can produce more than we can consume domestically.
Well, let's talk about the supply component of that. What are the top 3 areas to help increase or help farmers increase their supply?
Well, they're doing so well on supply right now, but precision agriculture is one of those. I'll give you one example I saw at the Farm Progress Show in Illinois last summer, and it was and really this also calls attention to one of the needs that we have in this country. To use precision agriculture, we've got to have a ubiquitous broadband network across this country.
Right.
There are many products on the shelf now waiting to be deployed that would make our agriculture more productive. Here's a great example. In Illinois last year, there was a GPS tractor that had the accuracy of sub-inch technology. They could rip a row and put a rip in the soil and sub-inch accuracy there in the fall, placing about half the fertilizer in that furrow over the winter, where it cured, it thawed, it froze, it thawed, it froze, and then in the spring come back in that exact same sub-inch accuracy and place the seed over where that fertilizer lay. Wow. With a 28 bushel per acre increase and about half the inputs. That's real productivity, but it's dependent on a broadband network where farmers can participate not only in their farmhouses, but in their fields across America.
Wow, that is crazy. That's amazing. I am just floored by how well. I guess it really, the point that you're making here, it's so important to have that broadband so that they can use it in their tractors and be able to locate precisely, as you were describing, where to place the seed, where to place the fertilizer. So
right.
That makes a lot of sense. Let me talk about regulation, because I love this quote that you had recently. You said that President Trump was going on a rat killing. What did you mean by that?
I don't know if that's just a Southern term or not, but he's maybe more appropriately a regulation killing. He's really, I think, will be known as history as the deregulation president. What he has understood from his campaign and traveling across America is that the economy of America has been subdued and had a wet blanket over it through all the regulations, many of which have no common sense basis. You've had an overreaching administration environment where people couldn't pass things in Congress because they didn't make sense and there was no agreement, and yet they issued a regulation on that. President Trump is given us great directions to unpeel that like layers of an onion and peel them back until it gets to the core of common sense, where farmers and other producers, as well as other industries, can operate their businesses more productively and more competitively. Additionally, also, he changed the biggest regulation, that's our tax laws, to give people more incentive to do more and to be able to keep more of their income. So that's why you see the economy humming here now, and that's why I think you'll see the economy continue to thrive and grow rapidly during this environment.
That's interesting. That's what rat killing means. I love it. I'm from the Midwest, so we need things explained to us a little bit. So I like that. I like that. Okay. All right. Before I let you go, Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you, what do you see are the top agriculture challenges for 2018?
Well, again, I think probably it's what our farmers identify with us all across those 35 states we've attended. From the Northeast to the Southwest, Northwest to Southeast is really trade. There's anxiety over trade. We want to get a good established trade policy for agricultural products, and we're working toward that. While there is some anxiety over the disruption regarding China and steel and aluminum right now, I think the president is a tough negotiator who keeps people off balance with his pronouncements, and I think we'll succeed in this as well. Secondly is the second issue that we hear primarily, and that's the farm labor issue. We need a legal farm worker workforce here in this country that's workable. The H-2A has been very convoluted and very difficult to work through. We need a legal farm worker program, and we need to continue the deregulatory environment to get down to those things that make common sense regarding our environment and our ecology and our plant and animal health, and people's health regarding keeping food safe. So those are the three things that we'll continue to work on among the many others we have.
USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue, thanks for coming on the show today.
Andy, enjoyed the conversation. You have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Before I sign out, I just wanted to let you know that we have a simple way for you to communicate with us. You can send your ideas for future shows and feedback to podcasts@cftc.gov. Now, you can already leave comments on many of the outlets that the show appears on, but we thought we'd take it another step to make it easier for you, the listener, to connect with the show. Now, I'm psyched to hear your thoughts and ideas, so thanks in advance. We'll be back next week with another guest on our quest to learn about the markets we watch. I'm Andy Bush. Thanks for listening. This has been CFTC Talks. But wait, we're not done yet. It's time for a disclaimer. The CFTC is providing this information as a public service, and it is neither a legal interpretation nor a statement of CFTC policy. Reference to any specific product, service, trademark, manufacturer, or service provider does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by the CFTC. The CFTC is not liable to any consumer or any third party for any direct, indirect, incidental, consequential, special, or exemplary damages or lost profit related to the use of the information provided or referenced in this podcast. Selection of guests on the podcast does not imply an endorsement of any particular individual or entity. Many individuals and entities provide similar services to those of the guests. The views and opinions expressed by the guests in the podcast are their own and not specifically endorsed by the CFTC. Moreover, the information provided in this podcast should not be construed as investment advice. Consumers should rely on their own inquiries as to accuracy and relevance of the information incorporated or referenced in this podcast and assume the entire risk related to its use. The CFTC is providing its interpretation of market trends solely to inform the public of a framework for projecting possible outcomes under different scenarios. If you have any questions concerning the meaning or application of a particular law or rule administered by the CFTC, please consult an attorney.